What's up, champ? I'm Ryan, and this is Play Like a Champion, Sleep Like a Baby. And if you're wondering if I'm shirtless, the answer is yes. And if you're wondering if I have my microphone plugged into my beard here, the answer is yes. And what we're going to talk about today is resilience. Resilience is arguably the most important thing you can cultivate in yourself in 2025. It is cousin of adaptability. And with the way that the world is so unpredictable, the way that the world is changing so quickly, and the sort of waves that we all have to be able and willing to ride these days, resilience is absolutely key. So I'm going to talk quickly about a little bit about three things you can do to cultivate resilience. And the first one is that no matter what happens, you have to be willing to say yes and this comes from improv comedy, which in many cases is horrible torture to watch, especially. But in improv comedy, one of the key lessons, one of the most fundamental core values in improv is to say, with your scene partners, to say yes and. So if someone's creating some fantastical situation, you don't want to be like no or try to change it. You want to just go accept it and amplify, sort of go yes and. And similarly in life, with all the craziness that goes on, you need to be willing to say yes and, because ultimately you don't really have a choice. When something crazy bad happens, you just have to be able to say yes and, meaning I accept this, and what are you going to do? I mean, unless you're going to give up and fully quit, which we're not going to talk about here, but you will find a way. You'll think of right now, if you imagine the worst thing that you could possibly imagine, and then you say, okay, you imagine that happens, then what are you going to do? That's yes and. It is finding a way to accept and then move on from there. And this leads into kind of number two, which is to think to yourself, if there's something going on, there's something bad happening, you have to say, all right, well, what would have to happen for this to actually end up being a positive thing? I'll use an example from my own life. When I got really sick and I ended up in the hospital, and I was truly in such a state of pain and of depression, basically, that I really thought to myself, if this is the way that life is going to be, if I'm going to be in this kind of pain, if I'm going to barely be able to get out of bed, if I'm going to barely be able to think because of the brain fog, and if I'm going to have to be on drugs the rest of my life, I'd rather be dead. And then the one thing that kept me going was I thought, well, if I could find, the only way this would be positive is if I could find a way to heal myself, to recover, and then actually to be able to share how I did it with other people, so that they could experience, they could get their life back. Anyone else who was suffering from the same thing that I was, an autoimmune disease is what I was diagnosed with, and they basically immediately wanted to put me on drugs, of course. And there wasn't much discussion about lifestyle or stress or sleep or community or diet or anything. It was just like, this is what you have. Now you have to take these drugs for the rest of your life. And I had spent my entire life taking very good care of myself. And and not to mention, these drugs cost thousands of dollars. There's no guarantee that they actually work, or if they do work, they can come with crazy side effects. And I had just lost my job not that long before that. I was in my Cobra period, and so I didn't even have health care going forward, no guarantee of health care. And when you're really, really sick, you can't, you definitely don't feel like it, but the question, the jury's out about whether you could even work effectively. I was sleeping 11 hours a day and waking up feeling like I had been hit by an 18-wheeler, could barely put sentences together. My body, my mind, everything was shot. So point being that I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And then my main thing I took away was, okay, how do I find a way to beat this and then share it with other people so that there's actually something positive that comes out of this? So you have to basically be willing to say yes and then you have to be willing to say, what would have to happen? What would I have to make true for this terrible thing, whether it's losing your job, losing a parent or a loved one, being sick, what would have to happen? What would I have to do to make this into actually a positive thing? And then, also I think finally the third piece of resilience is understanding that, and it's an uncomfortable truth for some people to actually acknowledge, but understanding that everything is effectively a one-day contract. I don't know if you know the NBA, sometimes they sign with like a 10-day contract. Certain players, not the superstars, but like journeyman players will sign a 10-day contract with the team. And we're talking here about a one-day contract. And realistically, things are on an even shorter timeline than that, most things. But let's just stick with one day for simplicity. Everything, whether it's your job title, whether it is your relationship status, whether it is your health, and so on. All of these things are one-day contracts, and they are renewed at that rate. They are renewed on a one-day basis. So, for example, if you are married and in love, and I am so happy for you, but the bottom line is that can change any given day. Someone can wake up and change their mind, right? And that's that contract. That one-day contract is over. You renew it every day. Your job, you could have the coolest title, you could be making $500,000 a year, you could have all the experience in the world, but ultimately it is a one-day contract. They could, at will employment, they can fire you pretty much for any reason at any time. Again, your health, you could turn around, you could be taking care of yourself, you could be doing everything right or wrong, and you wake up one day and now you have a chronic disease, or you break your leg, or you end up finding out you have cancer. These things can happen like that. And so everything is a one-day contract that you have to be willing to view with that level of respect, for one, and also with understanding that there's no guarantees. There are no guarantees. And so I think acknowledging that, accepting that, is one important step toward cultivating resilience, is understanding and knowing that everything is a one-day contract. Really, it's like an hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute contract. But again, let's leave that for another time. Let's just simplify it and say it's a one-day contract. So anyway, this is some of the stuff that is discussed in the book, Play Like a Champion, Sleep Like a Baby, which is linked in the description. And it's a survival guide for navigating these extremely disorienting times that we're living in these days. Our parents and our grandparents have absolutely no idea what it's like, even many of our peers, but they definitely don't have any idea, older generations, what it's like to live in this day and age, in 2025, as an example, in terms of relationships, in terms of the economy, in terms of the job market, in terms of the health landscape, how poisoned the food is and the water is, unfortunately, and all the things all the pitfalls that we have to look out for. So that's what the book is about. I hope you enjoy it. I will say this is Play Like a Champion, Sleep Like a Baby. I'm Ryan, and go play like a champion so you can sleep like a baby. I'll see you in the next one.